I've played jazz gigs in Chicago, Atlanta, Indianapolis, Seattle, Denver, and more importantly, I've helped a bunch of my students to do the same. So in this video, I'm going to show you how to become a complete jazz musician this year. So if you've already started this jazz drum set journey, then you've probably, listened to jazz your whole life, but you never quite understood it. Or maybe you were a fan and you played when you were in high school or college, but you never got all the subtlety and the nuance because you were kind of like a bit of an outsider from it. You didn't grow up in it. But now you've worked through like the Art of Bob Drumming or the Jim Chapin book or maybe a couple of big band books or courses, but you're still having these problems. One is that it just doesn't feel right when you play. Like there's something about it where you play the same licks that they do, but it just doesn't feel right. Or you try to play solos, but you get lost in the form. Like, you can get through maybe a trading four, but a longer solo, forget it. And you're really, really scared of them looking at you in a jam session. That would be totally overwhelming. Or you just feel like when you do play a solo, you're just playing the same ideas over and over again. Maybe it feels overly simplistic, okay? So those three problems, they have three very clear solutions that are going to make you what I call like jam session ready, okay? The first thing is you have to develop your feel, you have to develop your phrasing, right? And you have to develop your vocabulary, okay? And I'm going to talk about what those three things are in this video. And you have to do those three things for both comping and soloing, okay? And if you can do those three things for comping and soloing, you're going to be jam session ready. Now, if you can already do those things, stick around till the end because I'm going to talk about what makes you what I call gig ready, which a lot of my students, they're playing professionally, they're booking their own gigs, that sort of thing, okay? So let's talk about soloing first. With your soloing, the first thing you're gonna have to develop is your feel. And this is what I see with a lot of drummers who, are getting into jazz, but they've been playing drums their whole life, is that their feel, it's overly swung. It's too skippy. And it's heavy. It's heavy. It's skippy and the touch is heavy. When we're playing jazz, we want to have like a little bit looser touch, right? Okay. And the way that you develop that is by playing along with bebop melodies. So this is something that I have my students at the jazz school do. We take a tune like Billy's Bounce and we play stickings for the melody that match the melody and the feel, right? So right? You can see that that has a bunch of nuance. There's accents in very particular places and that there's a feel to it. I'm letting the notes bounce. It's not super skippy. And it's not all even. There's nuance. That's really what gets your feel going, okay? And if you get that, then when other musicians hear you, they know that you're authentic, that you know what you're doing. At that point, your soloing will feel good, but you still might get lost in the form, okay? And this is because you need to develop what we call phrasing, all right? Phrasing is like sentence structure in music. If music is a language, which it is, then licks are kind of like words, and phrasing is like noun, predicate, verb, there's a comma here. It's the stuff that when you put it together in this way, it makes it make sense. And the thing that makes this so hard, why so many people struggle with getting lost in the form, is because, AC/DC music or rock music, a lot of it doesn't require a lot of phrasing. A lot of it is just 8-bar phrases. The drummer plays the same repetitive phrases over and over again. But in jazz music, you have to generate the phrasing yourself because you're improvising, okay? So the first step to getting this down is to do something we call melody mapping, okay? So it's where you take the melody of a tune and you use it as the basis of improvisation. Let me show you what I mean. So a tune like Tenor Madness, right? Beep bop boop beep bop boop beep bop ba doo ba da doo ba da. A lot of you have probably just played the melody. That's a fine solo, but it's a little overly simplistic. You might want more options from there. So you could take that melody and fill in all the eighth notes. Already that has a vibe to it, okay? I could take it a step further, fill it in with triplets. Right? And And then the next step is to just fill it in with vocabulary. Same phrasing as the melody, but with my own ideas. Right? You can hear, that's where it starts, you can hear it makes sense. And then also I have all this creative vocabulary that I can put in there. Okay? Now, once you can do that, then the next level you need for your phrasing is to be able to generate phrasing, not just copy the melody, but make your own phrasing. And this is something we practice called generating phrasing. We use obstacle courses, okay? So an obstacle course I could set out for myself is I could say, I'm gonna play an A, B, A, B form, okay? So I'm gonna play something, an A, and then I'm gonna play something else like this. So here's an A. Then I'm gonna play a B, something else. All right, and then go back to A, and then back to B. All right, so if I do that one bar each in time, it would sound like this. Right? That's pretty simplistic, but if I take a 2-bar A, B, and make it instead A, B, A, C, so I have to remember that A, let's see what that would sound like. Right? You can hear the repetition of the repeated 2-bar phrase, the A's, but then there was something else. The repetition is what gave it phrasing. I created phrasing. That's what all these great jazz tunes that you know, that's how they have the phrasing. That's why they make sense, is because they use repetition. And you need to build a muscle for remembering what you played so you can repeat it so that it makes sense and you don't get lost in the form, okay? Once you do that, then your phrasing is going to be dialed for those jam sessions, but you're going to need ideas. You need vocabulary, okay? And there's really only one place to get vocabulary. You can get it from a book. You can get it from a YouTube video. I've made lots of those, right? But with all my YouTube videos about vocabulary, what I'm trying to show you is where I got them and the process that I used to get them. And that's what I work with my students at the jazz school. That's how we do it, is we do something I call transcribing for creativity, okay? Which is where you're transcribing something to get inspiration, to make your own ideas that you can use, okay? Here's how that works. There's 3 C's of vocabulary, okay? The first C is copy. Just take an idea from a recording, a little idea. So like Philly Joe Jones, he plays this on Asiatic Rays, right? I have that idea. I can just copy that from him. That's exactly what he plays, okay? But that's not necessarily going to come out in my playing because I would have to play it that one way. So the second C is create. It's where you take the idea and you mold it like clay. You see how many different ways you could play that one idea. So move across the drums, different rhythms, shorter, longer. Right? You can see that there's so many possibilities. And if I can use it in all those different ways, then it just has a higher likelihood of actually coming out when I'm on stage. But what I just did there, it wasn't really music. It was just kind of messing around with ideas. It's just raw creativity. The next step to actually get it to come out on stage is you have to put it in context. It's the third C, context, right? So it would be going back to, some set of phrasing and applying your vocabulary to it. So for example, now's the time, my melody map. Beep, bop, boda, beep, bop, boda, beep, bop, boda, 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 boda. Put that together with my Philly Joe phrase. Right? That's its own thing. It has phrasing. It sounds good. It makes sense. It also sounds like jazz because I have jazz vocabulary that I can actually use in context. And it feels good because I put in the time to do the bebop melodies, to get my sticking and my accents and my feel correct. And that's what's going to make you sound legit. When you're at a jam session, you're playing with other people, you have good feel, you have good phrasing, you have good vocabulary, you're going to sound like a jazz musician. But soloing is not the only thing that you're going to need to do at a jam session. You also need to be able to do these things for comping. So for comping, let's start with feel, okay? This is one of the biggest things I see is that, everybody's well-intentioned, but they learn the ride cymbal beat from a book or from a YouTube short, and it just doesn't feel right. It feels very sluggish generally, And it also doesn't have a lot of nuance, okay? So I'll try to imitate it. Usually the right cymbal pattern I see is something like this. And then when they comp, they do this. And the feel is just compromised because two things. It's very sluggish. It's behind the beat. And two, whenever you play something on your left hand, you're changing your ride cymbal pattern. And the ride cymbal needs to be constant at the beginning. It needs to be driving so that the band can feel it, right? Feel is what makes people know that you're a real jazz musician, because you come proper. It's like having the right accent when you're speaking a foreign language. If your accent is so thick that nobody can understand you, it doesn't matter what you say, right? So how do you develop your feel on the ride cymbal? I like to get everybody doing what I call the 2+4 ride cymbal, which is where you accent 2 and 4 on the ride cymbal and keep it consistent at the beginning, okay? So you start by doing this. You go quarter notes, all low. And then keep those low, but bring up 2 and 4. Okay? Now add the skip beat, but keep the difference between the accents and the taps. You guys, most people are not going to do this when they do it the first time. It's okay, but that's what you want to strive for. That's the drive that you want. And then you have to keep that even while you comp. You can't break it up. Okay? Once you have the coordination, keep that feel going. Your feel is going to feel good. The next thing you need is phrasing, okay? What you're going to feel like is like, oh, I can comp, but like, I don't really know how to react to the musicians I'm playing with. I feel like I'm just like playing along like a play along track or something like that. And you're also going to feel like you're just repeating yourself over and over again, okay? So there's two things you really need to dial in here. First, you need to do something I call with and against, okay? So in the solo, when the soloist is playing, jump in their gaps. Wait till they're done comping or when they're done soloing, and then that's when you comp. So something like this. I'll pretend to be the soloist. So right? So good. You're like, I know what you're wondering. You're like, hold on, you're singing all the parts. Of course you know when they're going to stop. When you're doing it with a recording, you're not going to know where to stop. So you're like, Jameson, how do I know? You have to get good at recognizing the patterns. You have to listen to them and react. That's what playing jazz music is all about. You put on records, wait till they stop, then jump in the gaps. You can do the opposite, where you try to play with them, where you match their phrases. And this always blows people's minds when you do something like, right? So the point of that is not to match every single note. You're not a psychic. You're not going to be able to do that unless it's somebody that you play with all the time. But really to catch like the ends of their phrases and know where they're going with it. It's more about the energy, okay? So that's going to give you a sense of like, you know, how to interact with people with your phrasing. You're going to know where to put your ideas. But it might start to feel a little flat because you're just going in circles with your comping. You're just playing the same ideas like, right? It feels very flat. What you need to do at this point is add landing points. You need to add what we call releases, okay? So instead of playing everything flat, you add these little micro crashes like this. Right? The way you do this is like a little slap across the edge of the cymbal at the end of a phrase or in the gap of the soloist so that there's events. It's not just simmering. You have build up, release, build up, release. And this is what piano players listen for, okay? Because they're doing these releases at the end of phrases and they want to do it together with you, okay? If you dial in those two things, the releases and the with against, your phrasing is going to be pretty good. You're going to know how to make your comping make sense, but you're going to need more ideas. You're going to need more ways to set up your releases. You're going to need more subtlety in your left hand, okay? That's when you have to work on vocabulary, all right? So for comping vocabulary, the first thing you need to do is get the subtlety, the accents and taps, okay? So I see a lot of people feeling like their comping is really chunky, and it's usually because they're doing this. They're going like this. Okay? Where real jazz drummers, they tend to play like this. They play most of the notes really, really low with a couple of accents. So you need to go to people like Art Blakey, Philly Joe Jones, and transcribe their left hand. You know, are they playing, right? Are they playing? You need to transcribe those ideas and go through the 3 C's. Copy them, create with them, put them in context, put them in a song. That's really how you get your vocabulary dialed in for your comping as well as your soloing, okay? Then you're going to be on a journey where you're always transcribing new ideas so that you're more and more creative and you can interact with people, okay? So you have the vocabulary, you have the phrasing, you have the feel dialed in for both comping and soloing. You're going to be pretty much jam session ready for every tune you play on. But that is the last thing you need to know is you need to know some tunes, okay? So you need to know tunes so well that you can solo on them, you can comp with them, and that you can sing the melody, okay? And the way I recommend for drummers to learn tunes is to start by learning the melody so well that you can sing it, okay? A tune like Driftin'. Be able to play it on the snare drum. Then you should be able to melody map it. That's what I was doing earlier with the Tenor Madness. You should be able to kind of generalize the phrasing a little bit so that you can solo over it. And lastly, you should play through it and try to solo over it. See if you get lost in the form. You generally want to get like 10 to 15 of those tunes down to that level with the comping and the soloing to be confident going to the jam session. Because at a jam session, they could call any tune. You never know which one. And if you know 10 to 15, then you're probably going to know one of them that they call, okay? If you go through all of these steps, you are going to be pretty much ready for jam sessions because you can comp and you can solo, and it feels right. You have good phrasing, so everything makes sense. And then you have jazz ideas that make sense and are exciting to you. So when people hear you, they're going to say, hey, that's a jazz drummer. Now, obviously, if you're watching this and you want some help getting to that point where you're really jam session ready, you sound authentic. I've helped like 40 students in the last couple of years get to this point. That's what I do all the time. So click the link in the description and there's a way you can reach out to me, see if we're a good fit for me to help you out, okay? But once you're done with this, when people hear you, then they're going to say, hey, that guy sounds authentic. That gal sounds authentic. I want to play a gig with them. I want to start a band with them. And that's when you need to start to get what I call gig ready, okay? So not just I can get by, but I can actually express myself as a jazz musician, okay? So really what this journey looks like, mechanically what you're going to be doing is you're going to be deepening all of those things. For one, you need tons of jazz vocabulary. To be a really confident jazz drummer, you need to have a good understanding of all the jazz grades. What does Roy Haynes play like? What does Philly Joe Jones play like? How does Max Roach play? What is Elvin's ride cymbal technique? What is Tony Williams' ride cymbal technique? And then a bunch of things like, how do I play a Elvin Mambo? How do I sound somewhat authentic and Brazilian? There's just a lot of like little subtle vocabulary things that you just need to start to amass so that you have a wealth of knowledge and you can express yourself in all sorts of different ways. So you're going to do a lot of transcribing for creativity in comping and soloing, focusing on these specific drummers. With your phrasing, you need to start to shift away from just thinking, okay, how do I get through this song? How do I not get lost? To how do I express myself? Because the goal of jazz is not just to get through a solo. It's to say something. It's to mean something. If you listen to your favorite drummers like Brian Blade, Marcus Gilmore, Tony Williams, Elvin Jones, These guys are super expressive, and it's because they have a lot of command over their phrasing. They have a lot of different options, okay? So what this looks like for people who are trying to get more to this gig ready phase is you want to work on tension and cross phrasing. How can I build up a polyrhythm that lasts for 4 bars and then resolves on the end of 4 with the pianist, right? You need to be able to juggle those sorts of things while keeping the form in your head. Surprises and expectations. How can I repeat something over and over again and then change it so that it creates a surprise. So, right? Set something up, go away from it, come back. That's starting to be like art. That's not just getting through the song, that's expressing yourself. You need to start to think about target and release points. I talked about that in a couple other videos, but it's where you aim for, beat 2 on the 8th bar, and then you build everything towards that so that it all releases. Right? It's more about the energy and where you're going than the specific notes, because you're going to start to build up those things and do those things kind of on autopilot. So you can focus on these more artistic things. You need to start to think about thematic development instead of just, whipping out a bunch of vocabulary and just barfing it all over the audience. How can you take one idea and work it so that it's musical? Right? How can you play one idea over and over again in a way that's creative so that the audience can grab onto it? Next, storytelling. Since you can play a 1-chorus solo without getting lost, how can you play a 3-chorus solo that starts quiet and gets loud and then releases quiet, right? How can you make a 3-chorus solo that, starts really loud, drops down to nothing, and then gradually builds back up? This is really creative phrasing. This is what it takes to actually become like a pro, somebody who's playing all the time, somebody who's at the top of your scene. And then lastly is interaction. With your phrasing, like the highest level of interaction is phrasing. It's where's the energy of the group? Where is he going with that? How is she going to release that? How are we going to navigate through these 3 choruses together in a way that's playful, that's simple, that's poised, that's adventurous, that's aggressive, right? What is going on with the vibe of the band? How can I take risks? How can I push the band in a direction instead of just trying to not step on toes and things like that? That's really the level you want to be at if you want to be somebody who's playing all the time. Generally, for my students who are at this level, it shifts away from like assignments that they have to get through to a lot of live feedback. Things like they record their gig or their jam session and we can see how things actually played out in the moment so that we can adjust their approach, adjust their artistry so that over time, this ends up being more of a mentorship thing. It's not that I'm telling you what to do like a teacher. That's in the earlier stages. It's more that you have a goal as an artist, how you want to sound, and we're crafting it together by seeing how things played out, training your muscle memory, testing it, seeing how things played out, and just we do that cycle over and over again. Another thing you're going to need to learn if you're at this gigging level is you need to have a wide knowledge of tunes, okay? So not just the 10 or 15 that get you through a jam session, but like, do I know every Thelonious Monk tune? Do I know every John Coltrane tune? Do I know every Chick Corea tune? Like, do I know every single Horace Silver tune? Do I know all the songbook tunes? Do I know all the Joe Henderson tunes? You need to be very what we call tuney. You need to be able to play the tunes that people play when they play this music. If you're at this level and you're doing all these things very well, you're going to get a lot of calls. You're going to start getting booked on gigs. Not a lot of people get this far where they're really, really in demand like this. But if you do, then you're going to start to need to think about different things like, okay, who should I be playing with? What are the social dynamics around this? Do I want to play with this band? And maybe even start booking your own gigs. A lot of my students, we talk about how to reach out to venue owners, how to get your date, how to, book your own band, how to pick the people for your band and how to run your own gig. And if you're running your own gig, maybe even composing your own music and putting on your own show. So if you get to that level, man, you are a complete jazz musician. You're going to be playing all the time. You're going to have a lot of fun playing jazz music with people. So if you made it to the end of this video and you want the kind of help that I've been describing in this whole video, whether it's to get jam session ready or you're more at a professional level, you want to get gig ready, then click the link in the description. There should be a way you can reach out, see if mentorship with me is the right fit. Or just find me on Instagram. Shoot me a message. We can chat about it a little bit and see if we want to work together on this. If you like this video, there should be another video you can check out here. My whole channel is about basically the philosophy I've been talking about this whole video, so you'll probably like a couple of them. Hope to see you on the next one.